Have you heard the one about the iceberg that breaks loose and it's just kind of headed wherever? It happened. This giant iceberg has broken loose from Antarctica. Scientists have been looking at it for years, and it finally completed its break from the peninsular shelf called the Larsen Sea ice shelf. Let's take a look. That area offset by red, which compares to the state of Delaware, which is not floating in the ocean. That's just how big Delaware is next to it. This is a 120-mile long iceberg of 2,200 square miles that is just broken loose. It is one of the biggest icebergs ever to break loose from Antarctica. And some of the images that you should go check out online are just amazing. Scientists are divided over whether this is a result of global warming. They say there's more of a case elsewhere in Antarctica for global warming than there is here. But this is the third large chunk to break free from this peninsula. And it's weird because it's winter. But it's been happening for years. I just think this is a really cool story. Thoughts, 5 words or less.
Wow, really elaborate hoax.
Tip off the old block.
Ice is not nice. I just think it's crazy that just a giant chunk of ice is like,
bye, Felicia.
Well,
see ya.
I also think it's crazy because the Twitterverse was pretty split on what this means. I think that scientifically, scientists have spoken out that climate change is real and it's happening and it's all around us, and there are things that we can do to prevent climate change from increasing at such a rapid pace. But there's still people on Twitter who are just like, like this don't mean shit. This still a hoax.
There are scientists who are like, climate change. This is an important distinction. Climate change is real. Say scientists. This they're not 100% sure of because as being like a result of climate change because of just like the kinds of things that have been happening. They need to be able to study what's underneath. The fact that scientists look at a giant iceberg that has broken loose in winter and say like, we're not sure if this specific thing is climate change. They aren't just rushing to say this is a result of climate change. That should give you more faith in the things they have pointed at and said, this is actually happening. So that climate change is super real, especially given the restraint they're using when explaining why this happened now.
I just marvel at the fact that it's the size of Delaware. We keep saying giant iceberg.
So crazy.
Giant is like not the word you want to use when it comes to this, but yeah, it's just, and then so they also talked about how it's not raising the level, that's not raising the sea level, which explain that to me because it's in Antarctica,
right?
So why would this free-flowing, free-spirited iceberg be raising the sea level?
Right. Okay. So it's floating in ice, so a lot of it is submerged. So the part that would melt, if it was already in ice, it's already displacing a certain amount of water. And then when it melts, it won't actually add that much more water to the overall sea level. They're saying that like, okay, that's happening there. But the ice that's on land in Antarctica, that is much, much more voluminous. If that were to melt and flow to the oceans, that's like putting a hose in a puddle. It just gets bigger and bigger. But this, since that ice is in a shelf already in the water, it's negligible. But they said if something that big were to melt from the land into the sea, then it would raise like the water level in the world, the sea level that much, which is crazy. It's just one block would raise it that much. And they say that there are bigger glaciers at risk on land that if they melted would raise feet of sea level, which is super crazy.
Yeah, I think that I sort of land where you are on this, Brett, in the sense that when I hear skepticism online about climate change and how so much of climate change is caused by man, I am confused when things like this come out and scientists are like, okay, let's explain what's going on here. The sea levels are not going to rise because of this thing, but what we should know about this block, let's come to these conclusions. How can you just say that it's a hoax?
I agree, Grace.
How can people not believe that this is happening?
It's so funny you brought that up because okay, this is not nowhere near the level of this iceberg, but in my hometown, you get all 4 seasons like clockwork. And I remember Halloween of 1991, it was like 20 degrees, right? You couldn't go trick-or-treating, it was super cold. So fast forward to Halloween of 2016, I'm back at home and it's 98 degrees outside. Mind you, Albuquerque, New Mexico, like I said, gets seasons like clockwork. So there is something going on with the climate.
And Albuquerque is also huge 98 degrees fans. So that's the thing that like over time, the temperature rises with the fandom.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Out of nowhere. Give Grace, that was pretty good. That was great. So God, 98 degrees. I'm gonna go listen to the hardest thing we got here. But these climate change deniers you have to know that it's real. It exists when things are not as they once were. And I mean, my Albuquerque analogy is very small compared to other things, but that's still a small inclination of what's changing and what's happening.
Yeah, and overall, the temperature of the planet is measurably rising. It is the hottest year this year ever recorded, and it only barely eclipses last year and the year before that. So the trend is upward, and there's so much that we need to do. And don't take my word for it, take the word of scientists who are making these decisions. Don't let anyone glom on to the split decision on whether this particular iceberg was the result of global warming dissuade you from the fact that all those scientists have said global warming is a thing. But I mean, some of those videos, you guys should go check them out because people are just like flying down the ravine. It's insane, it's so crazy. It's such an interesting thing that much ice has broken loose.